Film critic Jeff Andrew of Time Out magazine hailed this movie as scary, touching, often hilarious, and surprisingly enchanting. Chicago Sun-Times critic Roger Ebert called it a disorganized, rambling, and eccentric movie that contains some moments of truth, some moments of humor, and many moments of digression. And Peter Travers of Rolling Stone said, "So what if it's not perfect? It's magic." On this episode of Ruined Childhoods, we decide the fate of The Fisher King.
Sequel. Reboot. Which one will it be? It's the Ruined Childhoods podcast.
Greetings, Starfighters!
Hey, everybody.
Hello!
It's Ruined Childhoods. Is that your
Yes.
I am a medieval knight?
Yeah, it was kind of that it was the gallantry.
Sure. Yeah, that kind of ties in to our Fisher King episode this week.
Yeah, I know. I'm excited to talk Fisher King.
Yeah. And this is Ruined Childhoods.
Welcome.
My name is John. That's Dan. We're talking about cult and classic movies that we either love, are curious about, that we know are good, but maybe we need to rewatch them, and talk about what would happen should they be brought back in the future.
Yeah.
Again.
When such things can happen.
When
we
such
have
things
movies.
can production
Well, we
is
do
happening.
have movies. We do have movies, and we have a lot of exciting streaming content. So it's kind of like if there was ever a time in history to be quarantined, it is at a time when content producers can produce content and people can see it, and people can enjoy it, and people can pay for it.
It is more accessible than ever. Yeah. This is the time of year that a lot of people in the entertainment industry know to be screener season. And as a member of the Producers Guild, I've been getting screeners for years. But this year, so far, everything's been digital. And a lot of it has been things that have been very publicly available. Things that have gone straight to Disney, HBO, HBO Max, Disney Plus, Netflix, Amazon. The one thing that I did watch the other night that I don't think has been on anything is Ammonite, the Saoirse Ronan, Kate Winslet, forbidden lesbians on a rocky shore movie.
I mean, I don't think that. I think it's been available like, $19.99 on
VOD,
iTunes, but not not via a subscription. Like having Borat 2 available on Prime was a gift.
What a treat. Absolutely.
A gift.
Yeah.
And a lot of things. Spike Lee's latest film, which I've not gotten around to because I've not been in the mind frame for a Vietnam movie, but it's like right there on my radar.
Yeah. On our last episode, we talked about the wonderful Hal Ashby film, Harold and Maude. I don't have any more things about it. I feel like we covered a lot of ground. Dan, did you have anything?
No, other than that, after we had that discussion, I went and was looking at the reviews to record the intro.
Yeah.
And I don't know if surprised is the word. I don't know if disappointed is the word, but it's a mix of the two. I was dissurprised although that just sounds like I wasn't surprised. Anyway, I'm not going to bother with that right now.
Yeah.
The critics, it was not well received. The critics were basically like, meh, like what exactly is happening here? This is just like, they were very blah about it.
Yeah, I think that one definitely took some time for people to really appreciate. And I think that especially once you got past the 70s, it kind of became like a comfort movie for a lot of people, something to look back to for the style. It took a lot of time for people. Also, I mean, and this isn't really so much of a thing about the critics, but more about how well it did in the theaters, but like they had a hard time marketing it. I mean, it's really hard to convince somebody to see a movie about a 20-year-old and an 80-year-old getting together without like over explaining what the movie's really about.
Yeah. And I get that. On the other hand, it was 1971. Like, everything was crazy. But that's what they're going to say about 2020. But
that's what they're currently saying about 2020.
that is what we're currently saying about 2020. Right. But yeah, so I also felt like a lot of what I saw in the reviews that was critical of the film, they pointed out things that I think you and I both liked and thought, like, things that they were like were overstated. We had specifically, like, the number on her arm.
Oh,
we talked about how it was just like that one brief moment where you see it. Meanwhile, I forget which critic I was reading. It sounded really snooty, but they were like, oh, and how it just lingers there. And haven't we seen this before? And
lingers there.
Oh, I was just like,
it's like half a second. That's really surprising. On that subject, we had talked about the Amazon show Hunters, because I was talking a little bit about, post Holocaust, Holocaust survivors. And I was talking more about like in the days and weeks after the end of the war and the camps closing down. But Hunters, of course, takes place a few decades later. And I started watching Hunters. I'm a few episodes in, and it's okay. There are things about it that I like, but there's things about it that kind of rub me the wrong way.
There's enough to get you through an episode. There's not enough to make you sit there and watch the next 2 episodes, which is the experience I've been having with Fargo.
Yeah.
Going back to that, finished season 3, and I need to take a break because I'm obsessive. I'm turning it on my phone when I'm like making meals. When I'm like, I'm going to go clean the car, and an episode of Fargo later, the car is beautiful.
Well, here's the thing about the Fargo series is that I feel like when I'm watching it, that's one where I'm not on my phone while I'm like, I can't do anything else while I'm watching it because I get so sucked in. And then if I realize that I start diddling on my phone, then I'm like, oh, what did I just miss? And I have to go back.
I've done that a few times because I've time and again done some work, some data entry while watching episodes, and then I'll realize, oh, how did we get here? What's happening?
What happened there?
What? David Thewlis? Always delivers.
David Thewlis. Always delivering the goods.
I was thinking about how grateful I was for David Thewlis in the Harry Potter series, because it's just he's of all the Harry Potter characters, really, like, one of the most, aside from being a werewolf, normal, he's just like a really good guy.
Sure.
And
yeah.
Then you see him in season 3 of Fargo, and
great villain.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So
anyway,
there's a few bits of remake news I wanted to talk about. It has been reported that there's forward movement on a Short Circuit remake. Not many details on that. There's some writers. I wasn't familiar with who they are, but they have some writers locked in. And also there's going to be a new Predator movie. And the only thing that really stood out to me is that it is kind of not considering the one that came out a couple of years ago, I think 2018, which I actually liked.
Was that
Predator.
Was the
Isn't it just called Predator?
Yeah, Predator. What was I can't remember his name who did it. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, The Nice Guys.
Oh, Shane Black.
Shane Black, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. I liked it. A lot of these movies that had, I don't know, that came up in the 80s and were just such, like, I don't know, iconic movies in that genre. Clearly Predator has had a long life after its original, and a lot of them can just feel pretty schlocky and not well thought out, but I thought that the latest one is pretty good. It's, compared to the original, it's it's comparing an okay apple with a really good apple. It's to say one of them is really good, one of them's okay.
just I want everyone to know, because you can't see what I'm seeing. I wish I had taken a screenshot of John's face as he was coming up with the proper analogy there.
The bad analogy.
And I was like, where is he going to land with this? I was like, the roulette wheel was spinning and it was like, apple.
Yeah,
And
it's exactly. You have your Honey Crisp, and then you have your Golden Delicious. I don't know.
I took a moment to think about it though, and I was like, apple's probably the right scale for Predator.
So anyway, that's what's going on in the world. Another Predator movie, another short circuit.
Yeah. And who did I hear was working on the new Predator? It was someone I was like, oh, that could be interesting.
Dan Trachtenberg, who did 10
Yes.
Cloverfield Lane. Yeah.
Oh,
which I liked.
I didn't see that one, but I heard that's of the Cloverfield movies, the best one. I've only seen the original Cloverfield, which I liked.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I liked it.
Yeah.
Good movie.
Mary Elizabeth Winstead, excellent. John Goodman, excellent.
Yeah, honestly, I heard it was just really creepy, and
Totally.
that's why I've had pause about watching it. But next time I have the opportunity, I might give that one a shot.
So Dan, when you were saying that, while I was coming up with that amazing Apple analogy, when you were saying that you wished that you could have taken the screen grab, I was wondering if it was because I currently have my hair done exactly like the Fisher King's Jack Lucas.
And actually, this I am gonna take a screen grab because of that. Because
on the evening when we were recording this, I did an Instagram story on our Instagram account at Ruined Childhoods Pod. But by the time this comes out, it will be long gone. But it is terrible.
right down to the strand.
Oh yeah, you got to get the little strand in the front.
Well, it was a focus on the commentary track that I watched on the Criterion Blu-ray.
Yeah.
Did you watch the commentary?
Of course I did. I watched it, regular style. And then the next night I watched it commentary style. And I watched it regular style first just because it had been a while since I had seen it. And I was like, you know what? I love this movie. I'm thankful for it. This is the month of movies that we're thankful for. And this is a movie that I'm thankful for because I feel like it got me into weird movies. Like it was maybe one of the first movies that I saw that was off kilter, but still a little mainstream, but it kind of gives you the entry into, things like people like David Lynch. I don't know, movies that are just a little bit more bizarre. And Terry Gilliam, somebody who's a piece of garbage, but great director. It's conflicting to really watch his stuff now just because, and listening to his commentary track was just like, ugh, I know you're a slime ball, but
yeah, misogynist.
Real misogynist. In the commentary, I didn't care for some of the ways that he talked about, I don't know, Mercedes Rule and her acting. And it was like he's tried to come off seeming like the good guy, but in reality, it's like, no, you just weren't being an ally right there to this incredible, incredible actress.
So we might as well, since we're on the topic of it right now, kind of talk about, on the scale of how comfortable am I watching this person's work, knowing what I know about them, and also being older. Because for me, I definitely thought about that, and especially listening to him talk and trying to really focus on the artistic aspects of what he was saying and trying to kind of filter out the nonsense. So where I came to it is that I think I can still appreciate through maybe 12 Monkeys.
Right.
I think I can kind of go with 12, because I watched 12 Monkeys not too long ago as well. And
it's a great movie.
I have to give a shout out to one
David
of my.
Morse?
No. Well, I always have to give a shout out to David Morse. But in addition to David Morse, that should be understood. Shout out to the student in my class that I had today, who, when we were discussing archetypes in fiction, referenced Jeffrey Goings in 12 Monkeys.
Wow.
Yes. Well, all right. I'm going to shout out a few of my students right now. This one was the relevant one, but I also had, in discussing the archetype of I think it was like the sage, like the advisor, the coach. And I quote, we went from, it was that guy in Point Break, ... Gary Busey.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I'm sitting there reveling in the fact that we're talking about Gary Busey.
That's 2 meatball subs. 2. Utah. 2.
Nice. Wow. I'm impressed. Yeah. And so, of course, because I was putting some of the student suggestions up on the slide that I'm using to teach, because I'm teaching all remote. And I did put Agent Pappas.
Yeah.
/ Gary Busey. I can't just hold back and pretend like I don't know the name.
You have to let that kid know that, yeah, you know who he's talking about, and you know a little bit more.
Yeah. So the FBI's going to pay me to learn how to surf.
So it's okay. So
also Pee Wee Herman. Pee Wee Herman, the same student actually, was really making an effort with like everywhere. And every time they suggested Pee Wee Herman, I kept saying, let's hold off on Pee Wee Herman.
Yeah.
We'll get there. And then when we finally got there, I was like, all right, now is your, like, yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Pee Wee
Was
Herman.
that like Man-Child? I don't know what was the
Jester.
archetype? The Jester.
The Jester. Yeah.
Okay.
Like tricks. Well, they were trying for the archetype of the innocent. And we thought about it and we're like, well, Pee Wee likes to play, he has pranks. And like, even though he's a man-child, he still kind of has like this kind of off sense of humor. And especially in like Big Top Pee Wee, he's kind of a lech.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
I didn't bring that up, but I was just kind of like, he can be kind of a dick sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And that's part of his man-child charm. Because children are dicks. True. So, yeah, we're talking. So I also want to give a plug to another podcast. I don't know if they've covered anything with Terry Gilliam, but there's a podcast called Fanti that's all about the things that you're a fan of, but there's a reason to be anti. You know, maybe there is somebody who's like anti-Me Too, like Terry Gilliam, but you are a big fan of their work. So it falls under that category. But we were saying, like, on the scale, it's like, yes, there is a limit that to which you can. I mean, it's like you'd have to be thinking about all of Monty Python and Brazil and Baron Munchausen. You know, there's just a huge...
It doesn't... like, when you weigh it on the scales, like, for me, Woody Allen, per se, like...
Right.
Like, there was a dip for a while, and then more...
Yeah,
I learned
the more you learn.
or you know, allegedly, and then it got to the point where I'm like, you know what? I don't even think. I think the last one I watched was Annie Hall, and I was kind of able to do that, and because I'm directing a radio play right now, I'm directing the Twilight Zone radio dramas via Teams. This is really exciting because every day I'm just figuring new shit out,
right?
But because I'm directing that, I thought about Radio Days. And it was something that I said to my cast. You hear Woody Allen because he narrates it, but it's Seth Green. That's who you see.
Yeah.
And it's got so many other great performances in it from Wallace Shawn, Mia Farrow.
Right. And just talk about
Diane
Mia Farrow.
Wiest.
Diane Wiest is so good. Talking about Mia Farrow real quick, you know, on the last episode of the podcast, I put in a clip of Ruth Gordon from Rosemary's Baby, which meant looking back at some old Rosemary's Baby clips, and it's like, man, what a fucking amazing movie. I really wish that Roman Polanski wasn't the monster that he is.
Yeah, so where's Roman Polanski? Where does Roman Polanski's filmography fall on the scale for you?
Well, that's the thing is Rosemary's Baby was after he was known to have committed this atrocity. I think that it was like a couple of years before.
I thought Rosemary's Baby was before that. I thought Chinatown was after that.
Chinatown is definitely after it. I think that Rosemary's Baby was right around that time. Maybe?
Rosemary's Baby is 68. Is it 68 or 69?
I don't remember. 68. It's difficult because, yes, it was like Roman Polanski is a terrible human for the things that he's done. And no, he hasn't been like completely put out to pasture. He's still been active. What's up?
So according to Wikipedia, so facts, he was charged on March 10th, 1977.
Oh, charged.
He was charged, right. I am looking right now for when this might have happened, but nope, it happened, in March 1977.
Oh.
Right. And I remember hearing it was at Jack Nicholson's house, but Jack Nicholson wasn't there. Jack Nicholson was with Angelica Houston on a ski trip, according to Wikipedia. And it was just Roman Polanski and this 13-year-old girl.
Yeah.
That were there and like drinking champagne and taking pictures. And he, totally drugged her and raped her. And he's a piece of shit.
Yep.
And I haven't watched Rosemary's Baby in a long time, but I think I could, especially because he's not in it. I have watched Chinatown in the recent past, and it wasn't a distraction for me.
The way I feel about it is like, I feel like I could watch each one of those one more time and know that it's my last time and be good with it.
Yeah, it's like I'm saving them for when we do them for the podcast.
Exactly. Yeah. So going back to Terry Gilliam, it's just that he's said really insensitive and stupid things, anti-Me Too stuff. He recently said something like, just tired of white men being blamed for everything. And it's like,
that's where he is now.
Yeah.
And it's especially sad because he is such like a counterculture related person, especially when you think of Monty Python, but even a film like Brazil.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And
Brazil is out there.
But even the messages of Brazil and the tone of Brazil, it's just kind of sad to see him as just like, crotchety old man now who, although like even on the commentary for Fisher King, like you said, he's pretty condescending and especially in regards to Mercedes Ruehl, but
he's condescending and he also, he just like pats himself on the back time and time again. He's so proud of the decisions that he made. And he does give credit where credit is due when other people, lend things to the project, whether it's Robin Williams or Amanda Plummer
the costume designers. He does reference a lot of those people and talks about how like Richard LaGravenese, the screenwriter, being on the set. So so now that we've talked about and clarified how up his own ass Terry Gilliam is, and how much he has like dislocated his shoulder, patting himself on the back, we are now going to throw a little praise his way because
it's a brilliant movie.
The Fisher King is a brilliant movie.
It's a brilliant movie. It's one of my favorites. I will continue to watch this movie until we find out that he's done something really bad. I think that's where I am with it.
Well, that's the more you know. Exactly.
The more you know. So why don't I get into a little synopsis and then we can break it down. As always, this contains spoilers. And as always, I'm leaving out a lot that we'll come back to later. Jack Lucas is a loudmouthed radio shock jock living on the top of the world in New York City, and he's about to achieve his dream of starring in a sitcom about a radio DJ. But all plans are thwarted when one of his regular callers takes his kill the yuppies stance a little too literally and shoots up a bougie Manhattan restaurant. This sends Jack into a multi-year depression, resulting in his hiatus from the spotlight and into the arms of Anne, a video store owner who falls in love with him despite the fact that he's a suicidal alcoholic. One night, when Jack is at his lowest, he attempts to drown himself in the East River just under the Manhattan Bridge. But two young punks have a different idea. They'd rather beat him to death. But then, out of nowhere, a white knight appears and uses his quick wits and a rock-filled sock to scare the punks off. This is Perry, a jovial homeless fellow with a positive outlook and an obsession with the medieval. After bringing Jack down into his boiler room hideaway, Perry tells Jack all about his quest to retrieve an item from a local billionaire who was photographed for a magazine in his home, standing in front of an ornate chalice that Perry believes to be the Holy Grail. As he is leaving, the building's maintenance man tells Jack that Perry used to live in the building, but went mad when a gunman opened fire in a restaurant and killed his wife right in front of him. Jack immediately puts the pieces together and believes that he will be saved from his own demons if he helps out Perry. At first, he tries to give Perry some money, but that's not important to him. Then, Perry shows Jack the thing that he cares about the most, a mousy reader at a publishing company who loves just about nothing except romance novels, dumplings, and jawbreakers. Jack has a new mission now: get Perry and his dream girl together. With reluctant assistance from Anne, Jack tracks down the woman's information and tricks her into thinking that she won a contest for a free membership to Anne's video store. After their first encounter, the woman, whose name is Lydia, turns out to be very rude and put off. She notices Anne's custom nail job, and a plan is made. Anne will do Lydia's nails while Jack gussies up Perry in an effort to get the post-manicure double date in the works. They go out to a Chinese restaurant and have the best time. Lydia and Perry really hit it off, while Jack and Anne sit proudly with their accomplishment. Thinking that the curse has been lifted, Jack makes arrangements with his agent to come back to work. What Jack doesn't know is that all the while, Perry, who just shared a first kiss with Lydia, has been assaulted by the punks from the Manhattan Bridge and is now in a coma. Once Jack finds out, he becomes angry with Perry and decides to move on with his life, but it's not so simple. During a meeting with a TV executive to get Jack on board with a new sitcom showing the lighter side of homelessness, Jack realizes that his work is not yet done. He has to give Perry the thing he wants, the Holy Grail. Jack loads up on Perry's personal items and clothing to scale the wall of the billionaire's New York City castle so that he can break in and get the Grail. He is surprisingly successful, but then discovers that the billionaire has overdosed on some sort of prescription medication. In an act of bizarre kindness, Jack walks out of the front door so that the alarm can go off and someone can save the man. Jack delivers the Grail to Perry, causing him to wake from his coma. He's finally able to confront his past trauma and move on with his life. The experience has also cured Jack, but in more ways than he expects. He is cured of being a total asshole. He even is finally able to do what he hasn't been able to do before: tell Anne that he loves her. So Perry is played by Robin Williams brilliantly. Robin Williams' penis plays the role of Perry's penis. Jeff Bridges is so good as Jack Lucas. Mercedes Ruehl wins the Best Supporting Actress Oscar, playing Anne. Amanda Plummer plays Lydia. Michael Jeter steals the movie with his performance as a homeless man who's I guess former cabaret singer, a showman, if you will.
He is so wonderful.
Yeah. Kathy Najimy has a great cameo as a video store patron. David Hyde Pierce is the agent. We've got a very brief appearance by Harry Shearer as the guy who ends up getting the sitcom role that Jack didn't get, because that was the night that his listener shot up the restaurant. So yeah, damn.
Yeah.
What a movie.
So I want to start by just talking about, this is one of those movies that when even just listening to you talk about it, And yeah, I've watched it recently, and I watched it once with the commentary, and then I was kind of watching it in bits and pieces without the commentary over the last few days. But and it has maybe been a couple of years since I last saw it.
Mm-hmm.
And then before that, probably another couple of years. But it is always, since the first time I saw it, I can picture it in my head. And the feeling that I get, it takes me back. And it was one of those movies that, like, it was a fall movie, not a like winter, not like a Christmas movie. It was released in October. I remember going to see it in October. Back when I would go, at the Rialto Theater in Westfield, New Jersey.
Excellent.
And I remember, in fact, I'm pretty sure like we were sitting towards the front of the theater, because I definitely remember that I had no trouble seeing Robin Williams' penis during the cloud bursting scene.
Right.
But man, yeah, like you were saying before, kind of the entree into weird movies. And I don't know if this is like, the ground zero for that for me, but it could be, and it's close. And I remember just seeing this and feeling, to go back to the Gene Siskel quote, "This is why we love movies."
Yeah, right.
It applies because it does. It tells. It's one of those movies that tells a story using film in a way that definitely not at the time, most likely not at the time, but couldn't really be told other than in a novel, in the form of a novel or a graphic novel. But this wasn't the type of thing you were going to see on, and also the mix of, like you said, mainstream, and the fact that like this was a Robin Williams movie, and
this is the same year that Hook came out.
The same year that it was like a month or two before Hook came out, and it's Jeff Bridges, kind of the everyman.
He's so good.
Or the Starman.
Yeah. He's so good in this. I feel like he kind of can't do wrong for me.
I'd like to thank Jeff Bridges, a man who should be declared a national treasure.
The movie is, when I think about it, and it certainly is in my top 5 of 1991, which if you look at movies that came out in 1991,
right,
you could make a solid top 5 out of most of them.
Yeah, I mean, just to quickly go over some of the like we mentioned that Mercedes Ruehl won Best Supporting Actress, so she beat out Juliette Lewis in Cape Fear, which I watched recently. It's so good. Also in that category was Rambling Rose, The Prince of Tides, and Fried Green Tomatoes. So Robin Williams was nominated for Best Actor, but lost to Anthony Hopkins for Silence of the Lambs, which that's tough competition right there. That's a really tough one to go up against.
Although it's crazy because Anthony Hopkins has, was it under 30 minutes of screen time in the movie?
But,
not that he does not deserve the... but that's the thing. Sorry, go ahead. You're going to keep listing.
I was just going to say, and this is what we talk about when we talk about like the hindsight awards. Something like Anthony Hopkins in Silence of the Lambs, it stands the test of time, is well-deserved. People still remember him from that. People are still chilled when thinking about him. Anytime somebody, I have somebody who comes to clean my place every now and then, and she has a cat named Clarice, and I was like, Clarice, and she's like, oh yeah, there's no other way of saying the name Clarice. So this year's also Thelma and Louise. You've got Beauty and the Beast. There's some just amazing movies that came out this year.
Bugsy is another one that I've watched recently. JFK, which is definitely in my top 10 of all time.
JFK, that didn't really show up in a lot of the Oscar categories, if any.
Nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Supporting Actor, Best Actor.
I think that I just glossed over those because they weren't important to me.
Tommy Lee Jones nominated for Best Supporting Actor. I think Kevin Costner. It's arguably Kevin Costner's best performance.
I think so.
But I don't want to go off. The point is, when I think back to 1991 and I think I wish Fisher King had been nominated. I try to think of what I would take off that Best Picture list,
Yeah.
and it's so hard. I think ultimately I go with Bugsy.
Uh-huh.
It's kind of like Beauty and the Beast is an accomplishment.
Sure.
It set the new standard in many ways. So I can't argue with that being included as a Best Picture nominee. It might not be in my top 5 of the year,
Mhm.
but I agree it belongs there. But what do you take out? Silence of the Lambs?
No.
That is timeless.
No, and there's something about the Fisher King that where it's like you want it to be recognized, but you don't want it getting like all of the attention because there's something about it that feels comforting knowing that it's like your movie. And Mercedes Rule for sure deserved that Oscar.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But just to go back to Robin Williams,
Mm-hmm.
where I stand on the Robin Williams Oscar, but he was nominated several times
Mm-hmm.
for Best Actor, and then I think just once for Best Supporting, and he won it. But I was thinking about his performance in Good Will Hunting, which, by the way, that character also came up in the archetype discussion.
Nice.
And someone referenced him by name, and I was like, yeah, I was really impressed by these kids.
Yeah, that's great.
And their knowledge of 80s and 90s pop culture. So they'll all do wonderfully.
Yeah, no kidding.
But I was thinking about it compared to his performance in Good Will Hunting, and I was like, I think he won the Oscar in Good Will Hunting for the way he talked about what he does
Mhm.
in The Fisher King.
Right. Yeah. That's true.
Going to see about a girl.
Yeah.
The little idiosyncrasies that only I knew about. That's what made her my wife. Boy, and she had the goods on me, too. She knew all my little peccadillos. People call these things imperfections, but they're not. Oh, that's the good stuff. And then we get to choose who we let into our weird little worlds. You're not perfect, sport. And let me save you the suspense. This girl you met, she isn't perfect either. But the question is whether or not you're perfect for each other. That's the whole deal. That's what intimacy is all about.
It's that and more. And it's also 1991 was the year of the Best Actor nominees with mental health issues, whether it was Nick Nolte in Prince of Tides,
Right.
suffering, that abuse from that childhood trauma, which Prince of Tides is another fantastic movie.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Nominated that year. You go to De Niro in Cape Fear. Enough said.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hannibal Lecter.
Hannibal Lecter. Yeah.
Bugsy Siegel.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then Kevin Costner as,
I'm blanking.
I'm totally-
on it. I don't know the name.
Jim Garrison. Not, to the extreme, but obsessive
Sure.
in that movie. So anyway, that's my riff on 91. But like, you could pick Terminator 2 came out that year. Soap Dish came out that year.
Yeah.
So many other things that could be on anyone's top 5, top 10, indisputably.
Right. So, just to kind of go back to the plot, there are certain things that I want to come around to. So, yes, we're describing Perry, Robin Williams' character, who experiences this really intense trauma. His wife was killed right in front of him, and we see that in dreams or flashbacks, and it's something that he clearly is completely blocking out. He's actually not even going by his real name. He's using a different name. And any time that he comes close to confronting his past, he is visited in his mind by this red knight on horseback who shoots out these fireballs. And, the first time that we see it, he kind of chases it through Central Park. And I can't remember all the times that he sees it, but it ultimately leads to right after he first kisses Lydia, and he really flashes back to the experience that he had, and the night comes and chases him, and then it kind of appears in the way of those two punks by the river, and he's just kind of like, just do it, end it, and thinks that it's the night, but it's those punks. I don't know what else to call them.
Well, just random trivia, one of those punks is played by Dan Futterman, who later, 5 years later, plays Robin Williams' son in The Birdcage. And then later on gets nominated for, I think, writing the screenplay for Capote.
Oh, really?
I
loved Capote.
Yeah, I mean, I'm riffing. Capote's a fucking great movie.
Yeah.
Goddamn Philip Seymour Hoffman.
I know.
So a couple of observations. So first of all, the name Parry, which is a defensive move.
Fencing move.
Fencing and sword fighting. So it's clearly his defense, because the first time that when he sees the Red Knight, and it's across from Central Park, is when Jack is trying to is just kind of bluntly and tactlessly telling him, like,
Parry, or whatever your name is. You know none of this is true. The Grail, the voices. There's a part of you that knows it's not true.
I think we have to start planning now.
Harry,
Jack.
listen to me.
Jack. You're acting weird, Jack.
I know who you are. You're an
Weird.
Jack!
Let go of me! Let
You
go
used
of
to
me,
teach
Jack!
undercover.
No!
Harry!
No!
You're a teacher!
No!
and you see, and man, Robin Williams' performance is so heartbreaking and incredible, because you see him as the defense is letting go. And it's interesting because he's got his defense. Jack has his defenses, which slowly he's slowly disarmed by Parry. It's like Anne can't do it, but Parry can. Which is, there's definitely that like hint of resentment.
Oh, totally. She thinks that he's off with some other woman, but actually he's laying in the middle of Central Park with a naked Parry, just listening to him
Jack
talking.
Lucas found in Central Park next to a man. The man was naked.
So, yeah, and it's really fascinating because as much as he kind of claims that he wants to just be done with Parry, he is just sucked into this life that he has. And, you know, there's the day when they're in Grand Central Station and he's talking to Tom Waits' character, the disabled veteran. And that whole exchange is really fascinating. And Jack is just kind of sitting on the ground of Grand Central Station just next to him. And the way that, like you said, like his defenses are down and he's really absorbed by this culture. And he's really listening. And there are moments when he really, really listens. And you look like you want to say something.
Yeah, because I do. But I didn't want to interrupt you.
I mean, I could just keep on going and you know, segue into 1,000 different things right now.
I wanted to connect it back to the scene when he's in the hospital and he's kind of cradling Michael Jeter.
Oh, yeah.
And there's that moment when he says, did you like gradually lose your mind, or did it just happen all at once? And Michael Jeter just kind of goes into this like really sad, it's not a real monologue, but he starts with like,
I'm a singer by trade. Summer stock nightclub reviews, that sort of thing. And God, I absolutely lived for it. I can do gypsy. Every part. I can do it backwards. But then one night, right in the middle of singing Funny, suddenly it hit me. What does all this mean? I mean, that plus the fact that I'd watched all my friends die. Sound like a veteran, don't I? My dad would be so proud of me.
Hey.
It's this moment where you kind of really see that he cares. He cares about somebody else.
Right.
The
way that he does make physical contact with these people is really fascinating. And another thing that I wanted to point out, and this is something that came up in Terry Gilliam's commentary only a little, and I feel like there was a lot more to explore there, but he mentions how in the scene where they're laying down in Central Park, you know, first of all, Terry Gilliam is known for wild camera movements and really bizarre angles and crazy moves with cameras and stuff. And at this moment, the camera just kind of locked off and it's just still and it's at their level on the ground. And I noticed that he seems to keep the camera steady, no movement at all, during the times when somebody is kind of pouring their heart out and the other person is just listening. And those times are when they're laying in Central Park and he tells the story of the Fisher King, which we'll get into shortly. There's the scene where Jack is saying that he wants to just have some time alone, and Mercedes Ruehl is kind of just tearing into him about, like, you know, if you're gonna leave me, that's really awful of you, but just do it. Like, don't tell me, like, don't feed me this story. And there's another moment. Oh yeah, when Perry's telling Lydia about how he's in love with her and how he knows all these things about her, where I'm watching it thinking, like, man, she's going to think that's so creepy, but instead it really works for her. But, you know, yes, it kind of goes between the two of them, but the camera stays still. And it's really, really fascinating the way that the camera acts during different, I don't know, ways of processing. Whereas, like, in the very beginning of the movie, Jack is in his radio booth and the camera's moving around all crazy. It's like not stopping at all. You go into these crazy close-ups. And at this point, you know, Jack is just completely removed from the world. Who knows if he's even thinking about what he's saying to these people who are calling in, such as Edwin, who ends up shooting up the restaurant. So I just really appreciate the way that Terry Gilliam did that.
Well, like you said, it's almost like his job as this, you know, talk show host, this shock jock, is, you know, supposedly to listen to people,
right?
But he's really just listening to himself.
Yeah,
he's not Frasier. He's not a, you know, he's not trying to listen and give them advice. He's listening to himself do his bit, his routine, his, you know, I mean, it was Howard Stern,
right,
at the time.
It was kind of now it would be more of a Joe Rogan type of situation. I know,
right.
But that's Jack Lucas.
Yeah. No, yeah. I know. Yes.
Like Jack Lucas would have Elon Musk on, and they'd smoke a joint together.
Fabulous. But yeah, no, I agree with you. Gilliam, he talks about that mostly in that scene between Jack and Anne, and how it stays so steadily on them and doesn't let him out of that frame.
Yeah.
And there's so many, as an artist, like, that's the thing, is it's like, as an artist who views the world in a unique way, he translates it so well visually. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about his other films and how this is not only among the best, it's also one of the most, I would say it's one of the most, I don't want to say personal because that makes it sound like it's personal to him.
Right.
But I think it is the most accessible emotionally.
It's about more realistic people.
Well, it's about people. It's not about the scenario, like Baron Munchausen is set pieces.
Well, I mean, it should also be noted that Terry Gilliam didn't write this one.
Right.
It was written by Richard La Gravenesse. Is that how you say it?
That's how I said it earlier.
Yeah. So this is one that Terry Gilliam didn't write. So it kind of explains a little bit why maybe it is a little bit more, I don't know, grounded in reality in ways that, like, obviously some of the earlier ones like Baron Munchausen in Brazil, but like even 12 Monkeys, which takes place in our real world, but it also takes place in the future, this like dystopian future, and it's kind of not set in reality.
Wait, you mean a dystopian future where a pandemic has sent all of humanity living underground? Yeah, I know, it's really far-fetched.
Yeah, well, I mean, yes, but hopefully we don't
No.
become... Yeah.
We've had good vaccine news this week, so...
We've had some promising news.
But yeah,
promising news.
Richard LaGravenese has definitely written some... Has done some impressive work. He wrote The Mirror Has Two Faces. Speaking of Jeff Bridges and Barbara Streisand, Prince of Tides.
Prince of Tides.
The Bridges of Madison County. Unstrung Heroes, which is a great little movie from the mid-90s. He also wrote The Ref, which
The Ref.
also falls under those movies of, can I watch this because I'm disgusted by Kevin Spacey?
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Uncle Kevin. All right. So getting back to the Terry Gilliam filmography, I was thinking about other movies that are as character-based. As in Brazil, I think you get in there a little bit with Sam Lowry.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's accessible. Munchausen, less so. 12 Monkeys, not as much, though Brad Pitt is very charismatic.
I think he gives a great performance.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's a great movie. I just don't think it's much more scenario-based than character-based. And I think Fisher King is much more character-based. It's about redemption and healing for all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least for these two. I mean, there's definitely backstory with Lydia and Anne independently.
Yeah.
So, but let me see. So I have a few other, and I know that you wanted to get back to the Fisher King myth.
So also, just real quick, Fear and Loathing is, I think, another one where it could be argued that it takes place more in a reality, even though it is a mind-altered reality.
Well, I mean, the thing with Fear and Loathing is if you have context for the movie, you know that it's reality. You know that
exactly, but it is a mind-expanded version.
Well, which is why Gilliam and you know what? I know earlier I said like 12 Monkeys was my limit. I might have to push it to Fear, like a Fear and Loathing viewing every now and again, or like it's good background.
Well, Fear and Loathing was 98, right?
98,
so that was just
98.
after 12 Monkeys, which was 95. Yeah. And then he kind of took a beat.
Well, there is
probably
Brothers
because
Grimm.
Well,
somewhere
there was
in the
Brothers Grimm, but that
2000s.
was several years later, and also not very good. But also, I think that around that time was when he was going through a lot of the Don Quixote stuff, which is like, you know, what is the documentary that's about that? I can't remember what it's called right now.
Damn
Lost in La Mancha?
Lost in La Mancha, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that if you really want to get a glimpse about like who this guy is, you just watch that.
Yeah. Did you ever see the eventually released Man Who Killed Don Quixote? No, me neither.
No.
Nope. I do remember you turned me on to a movie of his called Tideland, which I don't believe got a theatrical release, and I could kind of understand after watching it, but
I mean, Jeff Bridges is in that one too. I don't really remember too much about it.
It's almost like this bizarre Alice in Wonderland because the girl's father is a junkie who like overdoses and she like goes into this imaginary. I only watched it once. It stood out. I just remember seeing it as really bleak and really like just psychological and dark, but that would be another
really bizarre movie. 2005. Yeah, very, very bizarre.
Yeah. And I guess my last comment on kind of the way that of Gilliam's style is he definitely shoots hospitals in a very signature way.
Very 12 Monkeys-esque hospital. That must have been where it began for him with the 12 Monkeys psychiatric hospital.
But yeah, it's like they're almost circular.
Yeah.
and very like dingy.
Oh yeah, people
Yeah.
all over the place, just overcrowded,
Like, and randomly
open
like bleeding,
wounds, yeah.
open wounds, drooling. Yeah, very.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like it gives you when you learn more about Terry Gilliam, it kind of gives you a sense of like, oh, this is how he sees mental health, like really.
Well-
this is really how he sees people who, have problems as they are.
The way he talks about them in the thing, he's like, yes, and this drooling idiot.
Yeah, totally. But it doesn't line up with the way that he represents a lot of the people in the movie. And what's interesting, and there's a line that Tom Waits has as the disabled veteran, where some guy like throws a coin and it like completely misses his cup or whatever.
Asshole. Didn't even look at you.
Well, he's paying so he don't have to look.
And I feel like that's sometimes how Terry Gilliam views a lot of these people, where it's just like, I'm doing things to, show give some attention and show a different side of things. And also in the commentary when he's talking about the sitcom, about the showing the fun side of homelessness, people who love living in this lifestyle as being his way of avoiding people accusing him of doing that, which is just like, that's kind of cheap and shady, and it's like very disingenuous as kind of just like a shield to put up.
Yeah, it is. It's hard because I would praise a movie like South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut for doing almost the same thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, the fact that he felt the need to do that.
It's like he knew that he was doing something that people weren't going to like, and instead of rethinking things, he just kind of put up a little, facade.
Yeah, there's definitely some aspects of this that don't age as well. And
Right.
if it was any more realistic, I think, because it is just at that boundary, and like the psychological stuff is shown to be psychological stuff, which I don't know if you had this on the agenda to talk about, but the Grand Central Station waltz scene.
Oh, I love it.
That's the moment where I was just like, this should have been a Best Picture nominee.
Yeah. So for anybody who hasn't seen it, they're in Grand Central Station, as we were mentioning before, and they're there because Perry knows that Lydia walks through there every day at 5:00, and he just wants to kind of catch a glimpse at her. And when he finally sees her, the world becomes the way that Jack sees it. And everybody packed Grand Central Station, everybody turns to the person next to them and they all just start waltzing. And as he is following Lydia as she walks from one end to the other, and it's incredible.
The way Perry sees it, right?
Oh, did I say Jack?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just
Perry.
making sure that's what you meant. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that.
No, it is such
We're recording this
a
on a
wonderful
Friday
scene.
night. It's been a long one.
Oh, yeah. We're recording this on a Friday night in 2020. It's been a long one. Towards the end of 2020. To put it in context, this was the week that Rudy Giuliani leaked from his head.
Yeah, we're not talking about the Borat clips.
Oh, no. No. Anyway, yeah, so it is filled with some, and I have to think that, first of all, the Terry Gilliam of 1991 who made this maybe was a kinder, gentler Terry Gilliam, or a less, or a Terry Gilliam without the benefit of enlightenment, because that kind of view, the way that women are represented in the movie, and the way that mentally ill are represented in the movie, was not so out of place 30 years ago.
Sure. I also think that for him, he was there because he was making a movie, and he did what he had to do to make the movie that he was supposed to make, and I know that he cares a lot about the movie. you can hear it in his voice when he talks about it, and he has a lot of respect, as we were saying, for the people involved, anybody responsible for any of the casting, like you said, wardrobe, set design, everything. He really praises these people for this incredible accomplishment. This movie really does what it sets out to do. And
it really does. Yeah. And I have to just to add to like any of these things that we're talking about that haven't aged well, I do think that overall the film itself ages well. And especially if you're like me and you watch that movie and you can kind of almost be transported to that, first time seeing it. It was a great place to go. I unfortunately had to watch it in a couple of segments.
Yeah,
but
it's long.
But it's one that I will revisit. It won't be too long before I revisit it again.
Sure. Yeah. And even just for the performances, Robin Williams, you see so much range in this. In the moments like, when he is confronting this Red Knight, all the way to when he is laying in the grass in Central Park with Jack and explains the story of the Fisher King, which instead of explaining the story right now and probably botching it, I'm just going to play the clip.
Did you ever hear the story of the Fisher King?
No.
It begins with the king as a boy, having to spend the night alone in the forest to prove his courage so he can become king. Now, while he's spending the night alone, he's visited by a sacred vision. Out of the fire appears the Holy Grail, symbol of God's divine grace. And a voice said to the boy, "You shall be keeper of the Grail so that it may heal the hearts of men." But the boy was blinded by greater visions of a life filled with power and glory and beauty. In this state of radical amazement, he felt for a brief moment not like a boy, but invincible, like God. So he reached in the fire to take the Grail, and the Grail vanished, leaving him with his hand in the fire to be terribly wounded. Now, as this boy grew older, his wound grew deeper, until one day, life for him lost its reason. He had no faith in any man, not even himself. He couldn't love or feel loved. He was sick with experience. He began to die. One day, a fool wandered into the castle and found the king alone. Now, being a fool, he was simple-minded. He didn't see a king. He only saw a man alone and in pain. And he asked the king, "What ails you, friend?" The king replied, "I'm thirsty. I need some water to cool my throat." So the fool took a cup from beside his bed, filled it with water, and handed it to the king. And as the king began to drink, he realized his wound was healed. He looked in his hands, and there was the Holy Grail, that which he sought all of his life. He turned to the fool and said with amazement, "How could you find that which my brightest and bravest could not?" The fool replied, "I don't know. I only knew that you were thirsty." It's very beautiful, isn't it? I think I heard that at a lecture once. I don't know. It's professor. It's at Hunt.
So, I mean, I love the way that he talks about it.
I love the end of that as he's almost drifting back into reality.
His professorial mind. Because as you see at the beginning, when the building maintenance man shows you his belongings, there's a paper on the Fisher King. And not the movie, the story of the Fisher King. I feel like there's a different way to like say it that makes it the Fisher King
The
is the
legend
name of the
of the
movie.
Fisher King.
The Fisher King is the legend.
The Fisher King 1991,
Right.
or The Legend of which
Terry
which
Gilliam's the
as,
Fisher King.
Well, and also as you I'm sure heard on the commentary and read in trivia, Mercedes Ruehl had written a paper in college that covered the Fisher King myth.
Mm-hmm.
And it was what told her that this was like she had to take this if she was going to get this job.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there was
I
no
don't think
turning
I
this
read
down.
any of the trivia. I mean, because I was going to be watching with commentary, and I just and this is just like the Fargo series. I can't be on my phone while watching this movie. It's impossible. It's just it sucks you in that much. So anyway, another couple of stray observations I wanted to bring up. There's the kind of baseball jersey that Jeff Bridges wears that you see again in The Big Lebowski.
You also see it, if I remember correctly, and I'm 95% sure I do, in Starman.
Do you really? No, I
When
gotta go watch Starman.
He's not wearing it, but I think it's when he's looking at the pictures of, the non-alien Jeff Bridges who had died. In one of the pictures, he's wearing that shirt.
Amazing. I love it.
I remembered hearing that he used a lot of his own wardrobe in Lebowski.
Well, yeah. I mean, the more you learn about him as a person, the more you realize how much of the dude he really is. And I mean, hats off to Jeff Bridges. If you're listening, I hope you're doing well.
Yeah,
he's fighting cancer at the moment and hopefully kicking its ass.
Yeah, that we don't abide. But
yeah,
and while we're on the topic of Jeff Bridges, the work that he does with his eyes in The Fisher King, is so good. And so that character from the time from when he's shock jock Jack Lucas doing the mud mask in the bath, right down to when he's just drunk and stumbling down by the waterfront.
Yeah, he's incredible. Yeah, and also we mentioned this earlier, but his hair also tells a bit of a story. At first it's all pulled back, it's completely slicked out except for the little strand in the front, and then after the incident with Parry's wife at the restaurant, then he's got half of it up and he's got half of it down, and he's kind of living in between this reality of his old self and kind of this version of himself that's just falling apart. And then at the very end, when Parry wakes up and they're all singing "I Love New York in June."
I like New York in June. How about you?
How about you? So and then his hair is all over the place and it's completely let down and he is free. He is finally free. And then when he goes back to make amends with Mercedes Ruehl, and his hair is, it's cut a little bit shorter. It's styled nice. It's clean. He looks good and healthy. So his hair tells a whole story.
Well, first of all, as Gilliam points out in the commentary, when Jack goes to get the Grail from the, the billionaire's house
castle
in New York, the castle, real place in New York. And when he does that, they talk about how he's wearing Parry's clothes, and Gilliam is like, he has now become Parry. He has thrown himself into Parry's world. But I think that moment is it's kind of like there's this idea of fate going through it, how Jack and Parry were fated to come together because Jack was responsible for Parry's wife's death, and the idea of fate that Anne is meant to kind of be the rescuer, the caregiver, who nurtures, as she references in her monologue. And I still remember that speech she makes. That was the clip they played on the Oscars.
Oh, Well,
that was
it's-
the best Oscars ceremony of all time, by the way.
Yeah, I would like for us to play her acceptance speech right now because it's just so good.
Mercedes Ruehl, the Fisher King.
Oh, thank you. I went to New York to study acting the summer that I was 21. And like thousands of actors before me and thousands of actors after me, I went through the usual scores of moonlighting jobs and the usual scores of rejection and the usual legions of prophets of doom who are always there and always at the ready to give you the up-to-minute odds against you ever making anything of yourself in this business. And at this moment, all of those sort of doleful memories have suddenly transformed themselves into nothing more than the sort of charming and amusing anecdotes from my memoirs. I cannot thank you enough. There are a few people I'd like to thank with all my heart very quickly. The great Terry Gilliam. Richard LaGravenese, our screenwriter. An extraordinary cast. It was an honor to work with them. Roger Pratt, our cinematographer. Steve Randall, Linda Opes, Deborah Hill, Howard Fuhrer, Marcia McManus, my family and my close friends, for their patience and their respect and their support. And finally, I would like to thank Albert Inarato and the late Joseph Papp, who gave me my first shot on the New York stage and my first break in the big time, and especially the late, great Joe Papp, who once in a rehearsal for that play nudged me out of the shadow into the light and told me to stay there in no uncertain terms. I have, I do, I will. Thanks, Joe. Thank you.
What a treasure. I just love her.
But, and then to your point about hair actually plays such a big part in all of these characters. I think it's so, with Perry, and when you see him as Henry Sagan, he looks much more like the, Robin Williams of Hook.
Yeah.
Yeah, or of Dead Poets Society.
Right.
And that very he's got the glasses on and just the very conservative styled hair. But now he's the beard, the unkempt hair, and then when he takes off his clothes, it's all hair.
Oh yeah.
And and little guy flapping in the wind.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just, it's filmmaking 101. It's like, it's not just the performances, like everything has to be a part of it. And, I mean, I just appreciate it. I think I
love details
done really well.
like that.
Yeah. And, one of the things that Terry Gilliam mentions in the commentary, a lot of things that we're bringing up are either not necessarily from what he said, but maybe, I don't know, inspired by some of the things that he pointed out, but kind of like taking it further, a few steps further. But one of the things that he mentions is Jack smiling. He doesn't really smile until he's conducting all of the patients in the hospital at like New York in June, except for when they're at the Chinese restaurant and he's really proud of himself for, Perry and Lydia really hitting it off. You see him smile there, but it's like a different smile. It's a guarded smile.
But there's also, to bring it back to the beginning, and it's not a genuine smile at all, but when he's in the bath doing the mud mask and he's
forgive
me, and as Gilliam points out, it's like he's the Joker. Yeah. And he does that big with the eyes, and that is just shot so. So it's such a spectacularly shot film.
It really is.
It's really one that even, having a Blu-ray of it, I would still go see this I wouldn't go see it in a theater now. No. But, maybe 18 months from now.
Yeah. And just real quick, I want to shout out Roger Pratt, who's the cinematographer, who also
what else has
did
he done?
Tim Burton's 1989 Batman. Hello.
Wait, how did I not know that? Because what I was going to say earlier was like, if this wasn't my entree into like odd filmmaking and like visionary filmmaking, Batman would have been.
Yeah, so Batman was right before Fisher King, and then he also did some other stuff with Gilliam, did Brazil, Monty Python's Meaning of Life. After that, you've got Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, 12 Monkeys, Chocolat, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, Goblet of Fire, a few things in there, but those are the more notable of his filmography.
Yeah, I feel like I remember Terry Gilliam being mentioned as a potential director in the Harry Potter series.
Oh, that would be interesting, or would have been interesting.
Yeah, I think that the Harry Potter series.
Well, he and J.K. Rowling, you know, I think the two of them would get along thick as thieves.
Yeah,
talk about problematic people. So, yeah, I don't know, Dan. Is there anything else that you wanted to go over for this one before we launch into our next segment?
The music.
Right. It was nominated for Best Score, lost to Beauty and the Beast. The music is great. And
it's beautiful.
The, the repetition of the I Like New York in June is
and
awesome.
Harry Nilsson, like not long before he died.
Oh, was this right before
he died? Well, I think he died in 94.
Okay.
Yeah, if anyone has not seen the documentary Who is Harry Nilsson and Why is Everybody Talking About Him?
So good. Heartbreaking.
Okay. Heartbreaking, sad, but if you like music documentaries, it is one of the best. One of my favorites.
Oh, it's great.
And but yeah, Harry Nilsson was not doing well, and then he recorded, I think this might have been his last recording. I Like New York in June.
So I also want to on the subject of music, give a huge shout out to Michael Jeter for the brilliant performance when he goes to announce to Lydia that she has won the video store membership. And I'm just going to go ahead and play that in its entirety right now.
You must be she.
I had a dream for guess who, Lydia. It wasn't for her, Lydia. It's only for you, yes, Lydia. Some people can get their kicks watching couple and late night flicks. That's okay for some people who don't own VCRs. But Lydia, you've won our grand prize. Just think of it. All the movies you'll watch for free now. Dramas, westerns, comedies. Wow! Video Spot has the best selection. If you like porno, we're your connection. And everything's coming up videos. Everything's coming up videos. But this time for free. For you, Lydia. For free.
Beautiful. What a voice. The pipes on Michael Jeter.
I had not been aware of the backstory.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that it was it's a song from Gypsy.
Right.
And you feel like, okay, well, they're just, they're not even using any orchestrations or recordings. It's just Michael Jeter singing these alternate lyrics to Everything's Coming Up Roses.
Yeah, about how she was winning a video store membership.
Yeah, Everything's Coming Up videos.
Lydia.
If you want porno, we're your connection. And did not realize that it was so difficult to get Stephen Sondheim's permission to use one of his songs, and that they really wanted to do it. And I guess was it that Gilliam was talking about it with Michael Jeter?
Yeah.
And Michael Jeter was just like, oh, I'll call him. We're friends.
We're friends. Yeah. And
yeah.
And if it's the only time that he's allowed for anything like this to happen, I think, something like that.
I think so. I want to say he might have made an exception for Camp, which he makes a cameo in that.
Interesting.
And although I don't know if they actually perform any of his songs in it. I don't remember. It's been a while since I've seen it.
Well, Michael Jeter's performance is just so awesome, and Gilliam mentions this.
Pour one out for Michael Jeter.
Pour one out for Michael Jeter. But Terry Gilliam mentions how, like, he was in a scene and they're just like, we have to just use him more and more and more because he's just so good. And
they bring him back. Yeah, well, he's kind of what triggers Jack's
right. So when
conscience.
Jack is like back as a DJ, he's going to this meeting with a TV executive, and on his way into
John
the building,
Delancey.
Oh yeah, on his way into the building, the cops are pulling away, or like security guards are pulling away Michael Jeter's character, and he's like, Jack. He's like, I know him, and Jack just ignores him, but it's haunting him as he's in this meeting, and he just breaks and he just runs out of the meeting, and he's trying to find him, and it's just beautiful.
It just occurred to me, and this is probably just like what you'd file under the coincidences section on IMDb.
Oh, you mean trivia?
John Delancey and Jeff Bridges were in I think their next movie together at Fearless.
Oh,
where John Delancey played, I think, Jeff Bridges' business partner. They're on the plane together, and like Jeff Bridges survives the crash and John Delancey doesn't. John Delancey, also known as Q to fans of Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Oh, okay.
And I think also known as the creepy, sexual assaulty guy, OBGYN in The Hand That Rocks the Cradle.
Hand That Rocks the Cradle. Let's see, what else do we have here? Taking Care of Business. Multiplicity.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He's always good at playing like a smarmy douchebag.
Yeah. He's kind of got that vibe.
Yeah.
But he was really good as the TV exec. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So Dan, I know this is probably the hardest one to ask this for, but what would you do with this now?
You're right. It's tough. This is difficult. Fortunately, being so familiar with the movie, I had some time to just think about different options and like what could be done with it or who could do it. And first of all, Terry Gilliam talks about how like this basic story could be told anytime, any place, anywhere.
Well, I will say the fifth character in this is New York City.
Well, yes. Well, and yes, it's New York. So
I'm mostly kidding.
Well, no, I mean, it ends with this. They're in Central Park and the skyline and the fireworks, and then this big like musical ending.
Right.
Like,
it's
this is like,
and what a great ending
theater.
too. What does he say? Like, he's like, "Am I moving the clouds?" He's like, "No, it's the wind."
Yeah. Say goodnight, Jack. Good night, Jack.
Yeah.
It's so charming.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, well, first of all, it's why would you do it again if it's been done perfectly? So it's like, yes, you probably could, but I wouldn't do it differently. Now, if you were going to do it again, I was thinking, well, like a Taika Waititi.
Taika Waititi?
Yeah, Taika Waititi would be an interesting, like, he's someone who can really blend that, the pathos, the satire, the humor, the surrealism.
Mm-hmm.
I would be interested to see a Guillermo del Toro, like maybe do remake it in, another language. I don't know. I was trying to think, okay, well, let's say you did some type of loose remake of it and you cast you cast women, and who would you have in those roles? And Kate Blanchett and Kate Winslet were like the first two that came to mind. Kate Blanchett as in the Jack role, and Kate Winslet in the Parry role, of course. And then I thought to myself, yeah, you could do a loose remake, but I wouldn't even want to call it. I wouldn't want that connection. But man, would this not work well as a musical?
I mean, my mind went not to musical, but to just stage adaptation. But, of course, there'd be music in it. I think that the element of I Like New York in June really works in this. I mean, it could be a different song, kind of, but I think that
I could imagine. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, just like, there is a song that comes up. And when they're in the Chinese restaurant and Jack is just kind of singing the song to Lydia and
Parry.
Jeez, why do I keep doing that? Parry keeps singing the song to Lydia, and
Friday.
It's just really lovely. And so there's, musical elements, but I wouldn't go as far as to say like big musical.
When I think about the beats of this story and I think about where songs would go in a musical, I do see opportunities. I see opportunities in the opening, and hey, get the rights to use Snap's I Got the Power.
Oh.
And have
which at the time
Jack
was an unreleased song.
Okay. Yeah. I thought I remember that song being a little bit later, but do that. Have a song where he's rehearsing, where he's practicing for the thing, where he's doing the "Forgive Me" line
right
over and over again. Have him and Anne, like there's so many great musical moments, great scenes between he and Anne that could be turned into musicals. After Parry rescues Jack and brings him to his group, his Knights of the Round Table. There's another. I think there's a lot of opportunities for music in this. You could really play out the Michael Jeter, everything's coming up videos, which, by the way, also perfect, like 1991. That is it's not just New York City.
Early 90s. It really, really works in that time period.
So there's really nothing else that I would do with it. A graphic novel adaptation.
Yeah, I think a graphic novel would be really, really good. And
Box Brown, if you're listening.
I don't know if Box's style is how I would go with this, but maybe he's got some friends. No,
he is the only he's the only creator of graphic novels that I could think of that would possibly be listening,
past guest from our episode about The Wizard.
No, Heavyweights.
Oh, sorry, Heavyweights. Jeff Rubin was The Wizard. That's right. Heavyweights. Yeah. Oh, that was so good.
Good time.
Yeah, I think graphic novel would be good. I mean, my mind, like I said, was really to more dramatic stage adaptation, with of course elements of music. But I do like the graphic novel idea. I do like that. In tone, because it's like, really, how do you capture this appropriately without just copying Terry Gilliam? Because the way that he directed it really defines what this movie is. And it's like
you need to see it a certain way.
Yeah, I'm sure that there were other directors who could have done this and it would have been different and also really good, but there's just all of the elements that were, the four main characters, the director, the cinematographer, like all of those elements that came together. And you know what? I'm going to go as far as to say 5 characters, because I do want to include Michael Jeter in there.
Yeah, I don't know if you ever hear his name in that.
I don't think he has a name. No.
But
because it's just it's somebody that they encounter in the middle of Central Park. Like it's not somebody that Parry was associated with to our knowledge before then.
Talk about great dialogue. There's a great scene if
when they meet him.
Throw in a scene.
Well, and
yeah.
Well, I just want to So one thing that Terry Gilliam did say is that, when we first see Jack in the video store, it starts off kind of with a shot going down from the top of these tall buildings down to the bottom floor. And he likens it to, you're in a fairy tale and you're in the woods and these are the trees and you are now in this fairy tale. You are now in this like wooden setting. And, that I think really comes back during the scene with Michael Jeter, because that's something that would happen, the way they come across this character is very much like a fairy tale.
Well, because he says, oh, there's a, damsel in distress.
Yes, exactly.
And another thing, it's funny, it's another thing that Gilliam says, which I kind of rolled my eyes at. He talks about movies about the Holy Grail. And I think he talks about it as though this and Monty Python and the Holy Grail are the only ones. And I think I said out loud to the TV, Last Crusade,
Crusade, bitch. Yeah. Oh, totally.
But yeah. So I'm sorry, I had a thought and I totally
Holy Grail.
No, it was prior.
Last Crusade, dumbass.
It was prior to
Damsel in Distress, Michael Jeter.
So Michael Jeter, right? So, and I thought it would be an interesting time. It occurred to me we have never revealed this on Ruined Childhoods, and if you've made it to the end of the episode, then you deserve to know, because we're talking about the Fisher King and we're talking about knights in a modern setting. John and I are, in fact, bona fide knights.
I was wondering where you were going with this. This is true. We were knighted, sword and all.
We were knighted, yes. We are Stropendrager, Knights of the Noose.
Yeah.
We are, I don't know that we are recognized as knights outside the city limits of Ghent, Belgium.
Right.
But
I had the HR department from the place where I work had requested that I fill out a getting to know your coworkers thing. And one of the last question was, what's something that people don't know about you? And I was like, well, I don't think that anybody knows this. And I just said, like, I was knighted in Belgium. I will not elaborate any further. And the email went out like yesterday, and I got a lot of emails and texts with Sir John.
Yeah. It's funny, and you had some good ones for that question.
I was trying to decide between that one and collegiate mascot, but that
honestly, it's a toss up.
It's
for me.
Yeah,
it's a flip a coin.
I mean, and I know that you could say the same thing, but I think that I'm pretty happy that I've in the time I've been around, there's been a lot of interesting, weird things that have happened in my life. So
yeah, absolutely. And at this point, I welcome it and enjoy it, and I'm just like, it's a day ending, and why
we were knighted shortly after a performance by Eliza Minnelli, drag queen, performing. Was it New York?
Yes, which I believe happened after.
Did it happen after? It's hard to remember the sequence of events of a very, very long night with a lot of alcohol.
It was as the kids say, it was lit.
So before we go on to talking about our next episode, I did want to once again mention our Instagram at Ruined Childhoods Pod. We're also on Twitter at Ruined_pod. I think that the only followers are each other and maybe a couple other people. So we are active on there. So check it out. You might also want to keep an eye out on there, because as we are nearing our 100th episode, we're going to be doing some new fun things and, actually releasing some merchandise. So we'll be plugging that on our social media accounts. Some fun things that are directly related to the podcast, but also some other things that can exist outside of the podcast, but are inspired by.
Absolutely. And John, if I may say, while we're on the topic of just kind of like the merchandise and
Merchandising.
merchandising, which, by the way, shout out to our brother Scott, who as part of my birthday gift sent me a Spaceballs face mask.
Oh,
Spaceballs the face
nice.
mask. So whenever anyone says nice mask, I go merchandising. So anyway, what I because this is also going to be our last episode of our month of gratitude, movies we're grateful for. It's almost 2 years ago that we started this, and that we had that. I said, I was like, I have this crazy idea. What do you think? And almost I know we're not there, but it's gratitude month. So I want to say I'm grateful, John, that you legitimately went for this, and
it came at a time where I was like, I feel like I need a hobby, maybe something that's away from computers and screens and stuff like that. Maybe I'll take up bird watching. And then Dan texts me with this idea for a podcast, and I was like, sounds like a cool idea. And then he was like, so you want to do it? And I was like, okay, this is an idea you want to have happen with me. Sure, let's do it. And it's been really fun. It's been really fun.
I mean, I have no idea how to do anything. John takes care of everything on the back end. So, I'm grateful for this. It is it is that break from everything else, and it's such a pleasure to do it. And I'm grateful also to anybody who's listening, whether you're listening for the first time or whether you've listened before. I'm grateful to you for checking us out, and we'd be grateful for review, rating.
Apple Podcasts, give us a review and a rating. Tell your friends, tell your family while you're not having Thanksgiving dinner with them.
If you're looking for something, definitely. Be
no,
safe.
This comes out. Yeah, this comes out before that. Okay.
Yeah, I just thought that myself. Yeah. But be safe. Have a great Thanksgiving. If you're not sure what movies to watch, maybe take a look at our archives, and maybe there's an episode
91, I think. Yeah,
this is 91.
Well, let's talk about episode 92.
Episode 90. Well, so for episode 91, we did ironically
movie from
or
91.
Coincidentally or IMDb trivia, we did a movie from 1991, and episode 92 is going to be a movie from 1992.
I did not even realize we were going to be doing that. That's amazing. It was just kind of one of those things where I was like, I don't know, maybe this one?
That is some IMDb trivia for you right there, otherwise known as coincidence. So we're going to be going to 1992, a very different type of movie. We are going to be shipping out with Steven Seagal and the previous year's Oscar nominee, Tommy Lee Jones. It's Under Siege, baby.
Under Siege, baby. I am stoked. If you've listened to past episodes, you may have heard a certain clip from this movie that will certainly be playing again on the next episode, because it's a monologue that I love from Tommy Lee Jones. This is a wild performance from Tommy Lee Jones that's just so different from the things that you know him from. So I'm just jazzed to revisit it.
And we will talk about what it does for this movie on our next episode.
Yeah. Well, Dan, as you go off chasing the Red Knight, I wish you a good journey.
A good journey to you, knights.
Ah, Lydia. She was the most glorious creature under the sun. Thais, Jubari, Gabo, rolled into one.